first of all, I think another big round of applause for our presenters and speakers. I think pretty amazing stuff and a lot to talk about in the next session, which is across the street over a few beers. So I'm gonna do a two-part presentation here after we go through some big thank yous, more big thank yous. The presentation is called AECtech Graph and Self-Disruption. First, I'd like to thank our sponsors, our big sponsors here, TestFit, Bentley, and Autodesk for funding some of the events. We've sort of upped our game in terms of like the number of things that we're doing. So we've reached out to these people and they were extremely generous to provide their support for these events. So thanks to TestFit, Bentley, and Autodesk for sure. These are the people and the firms that are involved with this event. So it's pretty impressive. It's like a who's who of what's happening in the world of technology and AEC. Which is why sort of that's, if people ask us, you know, how do you guys do your events? And it's just like, we ask really smart people to show up, and that's it, you know, and then sooner or later, and you know, I think you start to, you get a sense. I mean, every time we do these, there's like a trend that starts to appear, do these presentations in various formats. And I think we all learn from that, and we all sort of, you know, make our own trajectories of where we're going to take our next project or our next development or our next career path potentially. So I think this is like a really nice place to, you know, to see that and sort of absorb all the things that are going on. So again, a big thanks for these firms that have put their effort into this event. Huge thanks to Dave and Giselle. I mean, there is a ton of work. So Dave's been doing it for a couple of years, so he kind of knew what he was getting into. Giselle just started, and I was like, oh yeah, it's like just a couple hours a day, or, you know, it's like, you know, whatever, you know, it'll be nothing. But you know, I feel like you know, this, and Dave as well, it's like, there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of ups and downs, but when it comes to fruition, there's a lot that comes out of it. And I think that's what we do. That's why we do it. That's why we get so much effort and great work from these folks. So again, big thanks to Dave and Giselle. This is, by the way, this is like a 6-month effort. This is not like we wake up one day and say, we're going to do an event. No, we actually started thinking about it the day after this event essentially will happen. Big thanks to the team. We've grown over the years. I show this, you know, sort of when we started Core Studio, which is 2011, and I started my career at Thornton Tomasetti in 1995, which is sort of part of this story, I would say. The folks highlighted in red are the Core AI team that works every day, but really all of our AI tools is a complete team effort. Everybody on this slide here has participated in those efforts, and which is why machine learning and AI is really hard. It takes a full team and a super diverse group of people and talent to pull this stuff through. So just getting onto this really quickly, I'm calling this an AECtech Graph Network. And I was sort of, in retrospect, thinking about, this is our 10th anniversary, by the way, of doing this. And I should also thank Thornton Tomasetti, by the way, that funds this thing. So, you know, that's, I shouldn't, you know, but the reason why, and you know, a lot of people, a lot of this story starts to happen. It's like, people ask me, why does Thornton Tomasetti, you know, keep sort of pushing the envelope and you know, growing this group? And the reality is, it's return on investment. We have been able to demonstrate that, you know, again, not what you're seeing today is very advanced tools, but when we started, it was just Grasshopper. We just did Grasshopper. We made projects better. We made clients happier. That's worth it. That alone is worth doing. So if that's making your clients happier, that's winning you more projects, you got to do more. You know, it's not a specialty. It shouldn't be a specialty anymore. It should be just part of the process. So that's how it sort of started. And I'm going to just tell a little bit of, again, a little retrospective of like why I think these events and actually, and this is also something I've been seeing over the pandemic, is that people have sort of pulled back their sort of personal touches with events or with people or with coming to the office or whatever it may be. And I don't think we're ever going to go back to the 100% office environment, but you need to know what you can get out of the people that you communicate with on a daily basis, and what you should be striving to get out of people. It's not about doing your work well necessarily, because I would argue if you do a really good job today and you do the same good job a year from now, well, should you get a raise for doing the same good job really well? No, you should be doing your multiple other jobs really well. So just to talk about the personal connection, I worked on JFK Terminal 1 in 1995, my first structural job. And the funny thing is it's going to be demolished in a few years. So we're redesigning the new one. But the critical thing about that was that I worked with two really incredible engineers, probably the top two engineers that maybe two of three engineers that I've met in my entire career. Paul Liu, both of these folks unfortunately have passed away. Paul Liu was worked on the Crystal Valley Curtain, worked on a paper bridge. He was always doing something really, really complex. But he would sit in his office and with the yellow pad and simplify the most complex problem on his yellow pad and draw it in front of me. And I was like, damn, why structural engineering is so simple, you know? And then he was also, I think this is 1995, we were still doing Mylar and hand drawings. Paul was doing 3D AutoCAD, drawing details for Terminal 1 in 3D AutoCAD. And I was like, why the hell is he doing 3D AutoCAD, right? I barely knew CAD. I didn't know CAD actually in 1995. So that was also something. I was like, why is this guy doing this crazy 3D AutoCAD? You know, I didn't come to like realize until like 5 years later, but you know, it was something that I took away from that. And of course, Lee Petrella was the master detailer. Lee can explain how to put something together better than I've ever seen anybody do. So back in the day, shop drawings were actually done by hand. So the shop drawings were actually drawn by hand on Mylar and we would get blueprints. And the fabricator for that project was a company called Canron, steel fabricator. The stuff that Lee worked on, there was never a question. They just copied what he did. And so I took that away too, because it was like, most engineers would not go to that level of detail to demonstrate the project. They would give the sort of the guideline of that project and let the contractor figure it out. Lee was not that guy. Lee would show every single thing. And so again, I kind of walked away from that, like detailing is the shit, right? I got to know how to detail. So, you know, that sort of led me to like where I am now, you know, special structures guy. I used to lead special structure at Thornton Tomasetti, computational design. I'll get to that in a little bit, and detailing. And that kind of led to Core Studio, to be honest. So I want to talk about this event, and actually Owner Goon actually teed it up a little. In 2007, I had left ETA, went to Arab, and I was part of Sione, the publications committee. And I kept hearing about computational geometry, computational design. I was like, what the hell is that? So I said, I should, and Matt Clark, who's here, I think here today, I believe, was doing some of that general component stuff in the office as well. I still didn't know much about it, but I figured we should do something. We should have a presentation about that, like just exposed to the community. And we had, I can barely read it on the screen here, but we had Neil Katz and Kat Park from SOM, Matt Clark and Dave Farnsworth from Arab, Ian Keogh and Heish Laboro from Gerhappold, Owner Goon, who was at KPF, and Steve Sanderson from Shop. It was actually Steve, it was Federico Negro, it was Dave Fano, and it was Josh Amig. So that's like an all-star list of technologists in the industry. So, you know, the things that I saw was just like phenomenal. I said, I'm like a dinosaur, right? I'm drawing AutoCAD straight lines. Maybe I was doing Revit at the time. But, you know, Owner Goon was showing curvy stuff. It was all parametric, and it was just like way beyond what I thought the standard of care was in the industry. And that sort of catapulted me like, I got to do something more. I just got to do something. So, and then you could see sort of how it has moved on, right? So Ian was up here, Happold. He created this app. He was doing Dynamo actually then. He was doing Dynamo scripting, playing around the Revit API back in 2007. So he basically is the primary inventor of Dynamo. He's now at Hypar. And then I think it was 2014 at AECtech. Andrew was there. A lot of people there that are here were there. I think they might have been on the same team. I don't remember. What were you? So Andrew was here today. You know, there's a connection. There was like these graph connections of people and technology and inspiration that has come from these events. And I think that's why we do it. That's why I'm so passionate about doing it. And that's why I think people should do it. Go as many events as you possibly can. So, and then I would say, in terms of the hackathon, that has been like a huge inspiration as well. The reason why we did this, the hackathon in 2013, I sent 4 or 5 people to, I think it was the first AEC, it was called AEC Hackathon. It still does it, I think, based out of Seattle. And our guys went there and learned something called the web development. And their hackathon was to move a single point from the desktop, spin it up to the web, and the point moved from, you know, one point to that point. That was it. They came back so jacked, so excited. I was like, I don't know what they're feeding out there, but whatever it is, we gotta have some of that food, right? So we started our own. That's when we started our own hackathon, and so many ideas have been spun out of the hackathon. Mustafa had a hack called Pollinator, I think it was called. Pollinator became Design Explorer after actually I met him at the hackathon and hired him like a year later, right? That was it. Chris Mackey, I think because Mustafa was at TT, he came to TT as an intern. I think because Mustafa and Chris were at TT, Mingo came to TT. So there was all these connections of like, of AECtech being at the center of this. And that has spurred like all these ideas, you know, from, a 2-day event. So there's no replacement for that, you know. Rhino Compute, I remember going to Seattle to meet up with the Rhino folks, and Steve Baer was out there. I was like, I got something called something like a headless Rhino. I'm like, what? You know, this was 2018 or something, I forget. And I had Sergey and I had Dave and I think Emil was there, and light bulbs started to go off. So at that hackathon, those guys worked on something called Rest Hopper. Rest Hopper is a remote compute. We spun out our own thing called Swarm, and then because of that, we actually merged with Shapediver. So Shapediver is here as well. So, and I would say we also met Shimizu. So I think in 2017, maybe Shimizu and the Algorithm Design Lab. So Satake and Tamaho are here as well today. We met them, and then they said, you know, we want to do things like Core Studio. So, okay, you know, whatever, right? And we decided, they decided, I should say, to hire Construe to integrate a very popular Japanese software called Snap. And we're at the final stages of that. That's going to be released as a beta pretty soon. So again, these things would not have happened if it wasn't for this event. And Dave talked about sort of what we learned over the years about some of our web apps, and now we have Ellipse. So I think, after thinking about it, these are the things that we want to achieve from these events. And I have some quotes from Peter Drucker, maybe this old school project management, that's what I learned, no one's going to sort of feed you, your career. You have to go and get that career yourself. And it's coming to these events, it's talking to people, it's getting uncomfortable potentially, it's failing potentially, but you need to take that risk, or else, no one's going to give that to you. But the sort of outcome of that, you can see from even from the people on that list, is pretty amazing, right? They are the leaders of the industry in this tech world. So the other thing I want to talk about was what I call self-disruption. I don't want to go too much, but there's a lot of challenges in this industry. And not to get into every single one, because I can talk about 2 hours about this. I say Gen Z, people are laughing about Gen Z, it's true. So I'm Gen X, I'm almost boomer, you know, like, okay, boomer, right? But people in Gen Z are not gonna have the same, they're not gonna do what the boomers did. They're not gonna do it. They grew up in the world of gaming and automation, and, you know, they're not gonna do 1,000 shop drawings to learn, you know, to master that craft. They wanna do it like they're playing in a game engine. So that's a real issue. There is a huge dichotomy between who are running the company and who's actually coming up in the industry. So that is a challenge. I had talked about this in another event, and this was something that came to me recently, that this is where we are. You know, I would say, you know, Revit and things like that came around 2004, whatever, Grasshopper 2010 and 2011, but we never fully got to and things just got harder after that. And so we're at a point, an inflection point, where we have the means to actually leverage all of the tech that's been built over the many years. And I would also argue if you don't do it, your company may die. It may just, or be completely flat. I don't want to get into this too much, but we have so much tech out there. If we are not careful, we will become the world's slowest robots, clicking buttons all day instead of delivering the right information when we need to. And there is a real risk, right? And I'm going to go back to the food analogy. Clifton Harness at Test Fit is going to eat your breakfast. He's going to do SD for you. There is a risk that the traditional architect will walk to a client one day and the client will tell them, you see the Test Fit design? Make it CDs. That's it. You won't have the opportunity to deal with the whole design exploration because you're inefficient at it. We saw the Suffolk folks doing early design things. This is a traditional construction management company creating an early design app. So they're seeing the inefficiencies from the design community and solving it. Project Frog, you heard Matt, I mean, within 4 days, he's got a CDs like sitting, you know, a fabrication drawing sitting ready for 4 hours. There you go, right? And again, these are sort of very niche sort of problems, but you know, those things grow. Those things can expand. They've got the pattern, they got the process ready. Assembly is doing the same thing. And in many ways, I would, you know, Chris would probably say the same thing. In many ways, they're disrupting themselves. And that's what my job is as well, is to disrupt ourselves. But that's the only that we're going to sort of keep ahead as a consultant, that is, of the rest of the tech industry. So that is the sort of conventional architect if they don't do it, you know, but the opportunity is there, I would say. So how do you do that? Well, you know, Michael talked about it as well. A lot of, you know, Pablo talked about it. Martha's doing it already. Is like, you need to sort of figure out what those automations within those various stages of design can be automated so that you can do the more important things or just do it faster. I just want to, so this is an article that came out with recently, actually, from Harvard Business Review. And, you know, I would say this graph is a little janky. Whoever wrote this graph probably doesn't understand business, because if any company in this room went to a minus 20% profit margin, they'd be out of business like 5%, right? But I would argue that the journey of doing machine learning is pretty accurate. So that blue line that you see, we're in that journey. And we spent a ton of money getting to the point where we are now, but we are at that point where we think that we're gonna go up. And when Dan was here, we started in 2015, that journey. Those apps were great there was a lot of marketing that came out of it. There was a lot of discovery, there's a lot of failure, but we're at a point where we're actually start leveraging that. So you guys have heard it, AI. I think of AI as a new Excel. You'll never go back once you can figure it out. Domain expertise, mine data sets, and synthetic data sets. And this is sort of our process. These are the models that we've created so far. And we think it's going to be like a recipe of models that we can plug into our apps. And this is, I'm going to show you 3 apps that we have used this process using Cortex, which is our sort of platform for deploying models, storing and deploying models for a steel, concrete, and timber building. Big thanks to the team, because we sort of all hands on deck put this recipe together for these particular buildings. In this case, we're doing, the tonnage, the typical tonnage, the weights, the embodied carbon, and we could do cost if we had those metrics. This is a SDDD type of thing. I don't see this as being a CD type of thing, but the fact that we can do things in seconds versus weeks is significant. This is a concrete building. And this is only the beginning, to be honest. We're going to keep creating these models, improving the models, having various flavors of these models. And so kind of to Martha's point, this is never going to end. I mean, this is actually just going to keep going. It's never going to be 100% correct, but if we can get to the 80, 90% correct, it is a game changer, particularly for a structural engineer. So this is a timber building using those individual apps that Sila and Omid had shown. So this is where we are. I sat here last year and said that our goal is to do DD in 1 day. We're really, really close. And I think our challenge for next year is going to be the adoption part, is to make the engineers comfortable with the technology. So, which we heard a lot about that today. So that's my challenge for next year: build better models and get the sort of change the behavior and the culture of the firm so that they can get comfortable with this. Thank you.